Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. I'm recording this on Sunday. You're probably going to see it on a Monday. But Sunday's a very important day to me. Some of you may go to church. I have Superman Sundays. I put my Superman documentaries on from the morning. You know, the classic one that they made to build up to Superman Returns. Look Up in the Sky, The Amazing Story of Superman. The Science of Superman, which is a great one as well. The Mythology of Superman. There's a little documentary about Christopher Reeve, 10 minutes. That's cool. And then a big documentary about Dick Donner's Superman, which really is about what he had to do to make Superman 78. It's an amazing documentary. They talk about his problems with the soul kind. So it's a whole thing for me. And, you know, and I call it Superman Sunday. So because I have a Superman Sunday, and what I do afterwards, I watch Superman 78. I may even listen to Dick Donner's and Tom Mankiewicz's commentary. I watch Man of Steel and maybe a little bit of Superman Returns, of course, with the Return to Krypton sequence. You shouldn't be watching Superman Returns without the Return to Krypton sequence. That's my rule. And if you don't do that, me and you are going to have words. But anyway, I digress. This video is called James Gunn versus Superman 78 and Man of Steel. That is the challenge in front of him. To create, make and execute a better Superman film than Superman 78 and Man of Steel, which are my two favourite Superman films of all time. But when it comes to Superman media, it's number 1, Superman 78, number 2, Smallville, and number 3, Man of Steel. I like Superman 2, it's not as good as those others as far as I'm concerned. I like Superman 3, same again. Superman 4 is watchable, but has its problems because of the funding that they pulled. You know, BVS is an excellent movie, but I wouldn't say it's my favourite movie with Superman in, but I think it's a great movie. There's no question about that. So there's lots of great Superman media out there, but I've just told you my top 3. Can James Gunn do the impossible and make a better Superman movie than Superman 78 and Man of Steel? That's the question I'm asking you today. And I'd love for you to comment down below. Please, for everyone watching this, give me your constructive opinion. This is a place where any opinion is valid, even if I don't agree with you. And if I see you in my comments, I've been busy lately, so I haven't been checking my comments. But when I do, we may have a little debate, a nice debate. It's okay to disagree. It's okay, as Ricky Gervais says, it's all right for me to have an opinion, then for you to say that I don't agree with your opinion, right? That's great. It's not a crime. It's not a problem. We don't have to be enemies if we don't agree. Come on, people. I don't know. Look, I don't know. I don't know if James Gunn is capable of making a better Superman film than Superman 78 and Man of Steel. I guess we'll see. It's a huge challenge. I mean, I've guessed what he's going to do. I think there will be a Middle Eastern kind of battle that they're trying to pull Superman in, which is interesting because maybe Superman is refusing to get involved with a conflict and the media and certain people are trying to drag him into it. It's a similar story that I've had in my Superman movie script, which I've never pitched about. Basically, it's about Metallo. Some of you would have heard this. You may be bored of hearing about this. Metallo, you know, John Corbin and Clark and Lois are all friends. They work in the Daily Planet together. You know, John dies, and then, you know, Lex Luthor, you know, turns him into Metallo, and then, you know, Manchester Black and the Elite come in, and they pressure Superman into killing Metallo. Then Superman has flashbacks to the Second World War, where different governments are trying to force him to go against Hitler and the Nazis and side with the Allies. And Superman doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to get involved in the war. He wants to help, but he doesn't want to start killing or taking sides, because that's who Superman is. I think that's the kind of film that James Gunn may be going for. He's already said that he doesn't believe in a film about a good guy and a bad guy. That there needs to be morals, there needs to be, you know, and, you know, I don't disagree with him there. So it will be interesting what he actually does. But if I was a betting man, if I had a gun to my head and you know, you said to me, Mick, what kind of Superman film are you going to see? I think that may be the kind of thing he'll do. What's interesting today is that there's a lot of writer-directors who want to complicate superhero stories, want to complicate Superman. You know, Superman Returns is Christopher Reeve's Superman, played by another actor, Brandon Routh. A film that I've always said has great moments, not necessarily a great film, but there's a lot of great things about Superman Returns that I really admire Singer for. Bad person, good director. Let's remember that. But I think one of the things that was always held Superman 78 in good stead, it didn't overcomplicate Superman. It showed us Krypton, as is in the comics. It showed us Smallville, as is. It's simple, right? We see a Fortress of Solitude. There's lots of banter in a Daily Planet. There's some serious elements to the movie, especially when Lois Lane dies. That's very, very compelling. You know, so Superman 78 was the first CBM, the first superhero movie. So in a lot of ways, there was no pressure on it in terms of the public. As much as the public knew Superman and some of them loved Superman, Superman had lost his popularity by the time Superman 78 was released. So there wasn't huge fanfare. And it's interesting, because I suppose you could say Superman has kind of lost his popularity, but Superman's been losing his popularity since the mid to late 80s. Smallville really helped the character in some corners, but it's still been very hard to make the character relatable. But Smallville was huge for Superman. Make no mistake about that. Superman Returns, we know the box office to that. Man of Steel is kind of the most highest grosser for a Superman film. But then when you translate the finances from 1978 to modern times, then Superman 78 is the most successful Superman film ever made. Probably making well over $1 billion. It's critically acclaimed. That film is near on perfect. And when you think about, we're talking about a film in 1978, the flying has never been done better in a Superman film. Now, I know some fellow Man of Steel fans and Snyder fans won't like that, but I prefer the flying in Superman 78. They had no choice. There was no CGI. And that's why the flying looks so natural and so real. They got him on a pole, they've got him on strings, and it looks wonderful. Even the backing looks wonderful. And I've said it, I'll say it again, and I've said it before. My favourite flying moment ever for Superman is when he's flying after the rocket in Superman 78. It's a beautiful sequence. You know, when he's flying past the painter doing the fence and all of that. It is fucking stunning and amazing. And these are the challenges that James Gunn's got in front of him. Now, I mentioned the other day, I don't think there's a lot of money being spent on this movie. This could be one of the cheapest budgeted CBMs and Superman movies ever made. So that's the challenge from James Gunn. I think he's trying to tell an inspirational, hopeful story about Superman. But I also believe he's going to look to challenge Superman. It will be interesting because I think there's definitely a Middle Eastern battle in this story. But then you've got Lex Luthor as a mad scientist and, you know, the CEO of Luthor Corp or Lex Corp or whatever. So he's there. He's going to be a bit of a crazy guy, mad scientist. So how it all plays in, and Gunn's already confirmed that Luthor is the main villain of his Superman movie. Whether that's a good idea, considering Superman 78 had Luthor as the main villain. In Superman 2, he joined forces with the villains from Krypton. He was the main villain in Superman 4 alongside Nuclear Man as well. He is the main villain in Superman Returns as well. Again, not the best of ideas. It's been done. I think there should always be a place for Lex Luthor in a Superman movie, but more of a pulling strings villain. Because we've seen so much of Luthor, don't forget we had him for 7 seasons in Smallville, and you're not giving the other villains a chance. Now, I think there is some kind of extraterrestrial, superhuman threat in James Gunn's Superman, so we'll see. We know there's going to be other DC characters in this movie as well. So I kind of think I've got it worked out what Gunn is doing with this movie, but it'd be very interesting to see how it's executed and if it can work. He's got a hard job. Not only does he have to make a better movie than Superman 78 and Man of Steel, he has to bring in a jaded, tired audience. That's the biggest, you know, when people used to say Superman's not relatable and it's hard to make him relatable, I used to get angry. But the truth is, within a general audience and a general population, Superman hasn't been that relatable for 20 or 30 years. His fans, like me, will always be faithful and always loyal. To me, he's a fucking fantastic character and an inspiration. But to a younger generation, to the TikTok generation, it's very hard to drag them in to a Superman story. So that's where it's going to be interesting as well. The box office, the pre-ticket sales will be very interesting. But ultimately, beyond box office, it's about the movie. It's about the story. What story is James Gunn telling here? Because he's gone very, very traditional. Clark, Lois, I'm sure Clark will be in the Daily Planet a lot. This is 1 year after Clark has come out as Superman. As well, Gunn has already explained that as well. There is no origin story. And to this day, he's cast everyone else, but he hasn't announced the Jor-El or Lara. So even though it's not an origin story, you would expect to see kind of an image, you know, the AI that we've seen in previous Superman movies and in Smallville of at least Jor-El. But we'd like to see Lara as well. But he doesn't seem to have cast a Jor-El and Lara. Comments down below. Is that a deal breaker for you? I would like to see Jor-El and Lara in this movie because Clark's Earth parents are important, but so are his biological parents. You need them there. Surely he hasn't been stupid enough not to involve Jor-El and Lara. We will have to wait and see about that. Maybe there's a surprise with that casting. That will be very, very interesting. I mean, normally Jor-El, Jor-El has had a British accent since Brando, and Russell Crowe had a British accent, and obviously Terence Stamp, who played General Zod in Superman the movie and Superman 2, played the voice of Jor-El really well, and he's naturally from the UK. Terence is a Brit, and his voicing for that character was outstanding. So we've always had great versions of Jor-El and of Lara, and I want to see Jor-El and Lara in this brand new James Gunn Superman movie, but we will see about that. So I've always spoken about James Gunn's huge challenge, because when you're making Superman, it really is a different premium beef, because you're not making Guardians. You're not making the Suicide Squad, because these are middling, you know, whether they do well, like Guardians did really well for Gunn, maybe made more money than Man of Steel, I think, the first one at least. But at the end of the day, it's one thing to do Guardians. There's no pressure in doing Guardians. There's no pressure in doing the Suicide Squad. There's a huge pressure in doing Superman. To be fair to him, there doesn't seem to be any problem. He's run it smoothly. He's cast it smoothly. He's finished shooting the movie, and now he's on post-production. He's a very smooth operator in terms of making his movie. He's very, very efficient. It's one of the good things about having Gunn doing this. He can be very cheap. He's not an expensive writer-director, and he understands what condition and financial state the industry's in right now. But this is huge. This is huge for James Gunn. This is huge for Warner Brothers. And, you know, failure isn't an option. And when you're dealing with a character where filmmakers have found it hard to make him relatable, it's really only Dick Donner that found a way in making Superman relatable. Because, as I've said many a times, by the release of Superman 78, his popularity had been reduced greatly. Very popular on launch in 1938, through the 50s, through the 60s. Then I think we got to the mid-60s, 70s. Then I think his popularity started to wane. The Vietnam War didn't help. That generation was protesting against the war. And Superman was seen as the agent of the status quo. And people have never unseen that, really. So this is what you've got. Now you put all of that in, you know, with a Fantastic Four movie that people are excited about. They've seen sequences, you know, at Comic-Con. Everyone, even the fandom menace, even people like Nerd Roddick is saying what he saw is really good from Fantastic Four. And I think the release is, you know, around very close to the release of Superman as well. So that's another interesting port of call. What makes more money, Fantastic Four or Superman? At this moment in time, I think Fantastic Four does better than Superman. Not because I want it to, not because I like Marvel more than DC, because I don't. If you've been following me since the beginning or for any length of time, you know I'm a DC man, and Superman is my character and is my dude. I want this movie to be great, and I want this movie to be successful. But just because I want something to happen doesn't mean I should say it's going to happen, because that is dishonest, isn't it? And I don't like being dishonest with the people watching my channel, listening to what I have to say. The opinions and views must be genuine and honest, otherwise, what are we all doing here? So, big challenge. He needs to make a movie that's better than Superman 78 and better than Man of Steel. Man of Steel has all the bells and whistles that a modern day contemporary Superman film should have. It's got a big budget, it's got a huge special effects budget, the effects look brand new today. It's a brilliantly made modern day contemporary Superman film. We could sit here nitpicking Man of Steel as much as we want, but it's got its fans, and James Gunn would have had to have done a hell of a job to do something better. Because this is what people have been crying for James Gunn or someone to do an uplifting, inspirational Superman movie. And in some ways, that's exactly what you're going to get. But he is going to deal with the themes, I think, of experimentation, cloning, and war. And put Superman up against these things. So, how people react to that, and if that brings people into the movie, that will be interesting. It could be an interesting situation that James Gunn does make a very good Superman film, but people don't come in to watch it because the lack of relatability that Superman has with a modern generation. It could be a great movie that still doesn't do well, and that's something to look out for. But also, you've got kind of the elephant in the room where he's using the Kingdom Come Superman symbol, which I don't think is a very good symbol to promote a Superman film with, because I don't think the general audience see that as a Superman symbol, and it won't stand out within the marketing. So it'll be interesting what he actually is doing with Kingdom Come. Has he just given the guy a Kingdom Come symbol, but he doesn't do Kingdom Come? Will we see the beginning of the movie of an old Superman remembering back to being a young man? That will be interesting as well. Because what does that mean? Do we have an older Superman after this first Superman film? Do we have a Superman at all? Does he kill Superman off? It's something I've been telling you I've been worried about since day one. If he does that, he's in a lot of trouble. But we will see what he does there. But if he is under pressure, James Gunn, he certainly isn't showing it. But he must be. He must know what's at stake here. You know, a studio on the verge of bankruptcy, right? They need, because let me explain to you what I tried to explain to you yesterday. It's not just a case of one film being successful. If Superman is successful, they can kick on with DC Universe. And if Superman flops heavy, how, with all, you know, I mean, how can you go on with a DC Universe if this Superman film flops? Let's be honest about it. How can you? You can't, can you? I mean, they may try, because there's things going forward like Lanterns and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Peacemaker 2 is already being shot. And I think he's setting stuff up for DC Universe with Peacemaker 2 as well. So they're going forward with this plan. Personally, I would have done nothing until I knew how much money Superman was going to make. But, you know, the studio don't have much of a choice because DC Universe and Superman is last chance saloons for Zaslav, his bold, and Warner Brothers Discovery because the merger simply hasn't worked. So they're all sitting there now hoping that James Gunn can create a minor miracle. Because there's no question, Man of Steel wasn't under the pressure that this Superman film is. Superman 78 wasn't under any pressure because, as I say, Superman's popularity had gone down. This was the first proper comic book movie, so there was no pressure. That's what I'm saying to you. No pressure whatsoever on Superman 78. Most people thought, it's going to be crap, it's going to be campy, but little did they know that Dick Donner really took making Superman 78 really seriously. And it tells in the work, in the final product. The problem is, when you make Superman 78 so well, is there anything more to say about Superman? They did it in that film, basically. On Krypton, on Smallville, he saves the day in Metropolis, he captures Lex Luthor. Is there anything more to say about Superman? There's obviously more adventures for Superman to have. It's a bit like The Wizard of Oz and Judy Garland as Dorothy. You can't cast anyone else as Dorothy. It won't work. She's iconic. She's timeless. No one's never going to do a better job, whether you do a musical or not. It's never going to work again because they got it so right. And whenever you see a picture of Christopher Reeve as Superman, or him in Superman 78, you just think to yourself, fucking hell, this guy's fucking perfect. No one is ever going to make a better Superman than Christopher Reeve. I just don't see it. That doesn't, it doesn't do anything about the validity of George Reeves, great Superman, Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill, Tyler Hoechlin. But, no one's been able to capture the public's imagination in terms of Superman, like Christopher Reeve did. He looked like Superman, he performed him the best, and he was the best version of the character, and they had this idea of making Clark a total different character, totally different characterization to Superman. Clark wasn't the cool dude that he was in Smallville. Clark's not really, in the first episode he's a little bit clumsy, but as we go on, Clark's got a lot of confidence. Dean Cain's Clark Kent is very, very confident. Henry Cavill's Clark Kent is very, very confident. And they don't really change their voice. Chris was the only one who got it. The voice gets softer. His head goes down. You can see the lack of confidence. Now what James Gunn has done has changed Clark Kent's appearance. The hair is very permed, it's very different. You wouldn't recognise his his Superman also being Clark Kent. So we don't really know how David Cornswept is going to perform Clark, but I think we can safely say very differently to the way he performs Superman. That's the way it's got to be. Otherwise, the disguise is shit, and it doesn't really work. It's just a guy wearing glasses, which has always been the criticism of the Clark Kent in the glasses disguise. So I think that part Gunn has got right. So nobody knows if Gunn's made a great movie. Nobody knows if it's going to be as good or better than Superman 78 or Man of Steel. But I can't say to you I'm confident. I can't tell you I'm not confident because I don't know the movie the man's made. You see, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier because it's been quite a long video. My videos are 30 minutes and sometimes I forgot what I said at the beginning of the show. I'm getting old. But you see, a lot of people out there, a lot of fans believe that James Gunn is movie Jesus. I don't believe that. I think he's a good, capable writer-director. And when you don't have much talent, peak talent in the industry, James Gunn may seem like movie Jesus, but I can assure you he's not. His abilities and capabilities are limited, and he does a lot of the same things. We've spoken about him many times, about him being a one-trick pony. I still believe that. Superman is his opportunity to prove me wrong. Guardians of the Galaxy, group of people. The Suicide Squad, group of people. Peacemaker, group of people. And we can see in his Superman film there's going to be a group of DC characters in there that in the end will join forces with Superman. Will he pull that off? As I say, it's going to be interesting. Nothing in the industry right now intrigues me more than this Superman film, because James Gunn has made big statements. He's very confident, as he should be, in his own ability. Everybody should be confident in their own ability. He believes he knows how to make a great Superman film. He better, or his studio will have to be sold, may immediately be bankrupt, because without a successful DC universe, because it's their last chance, they've tried everything else. Their Harry Potter on streaming isn't going to work for them. It's not a viable plan. So if Superman is successful, they can go forward with DC Universe. So that's why Superman has to be successful. In '78, they just needed a Superman movie to make money, which it did. It made over $400 million, which, as I say, these days will be well over $1 billion. So the pressure wasn't as huge. The Sorkin spent a hell of a lot of money and they needed to make it back, but nobody knew. There was no guarantees. There's no guarantees about James Gunn's Superman. But James Gunn is certainly confident, or he seems to be so. The studio must be shitting a brick. They've made their decision and they're hoping for the best, because they need to launch DC Universe. Because they'll launch DC Universe whether Superman makes money or not, and hope the next projects make money. But here's the thing. Without a successful Superman film, as I keep on saying, there's very little chance of DC Universe being successful. So everything rides on this first movie, as we've been talking about so many times. And I talk about it a lot, and I'm repeating myself a lot, because this is the key element for them as a studio. They chose James Gunn. They decided to reject Henry Cavill. They rejected the plan from The Rock. And you know, it's The Rock. I mean, everything he does seems to turn to shit. But to be honest with you, as you know, you could say, if you look at Black Adam as a film, you can see where it breaks all the filmmaking rules. But actually, it's a very good comic book movie. It is highly entertaining, and the score by Lorne Balfe is outstanding. Still one of my favourite, CBM scores of modern times. But these are the decisions they made. They decided to move away from the DCEU. They decided to release last year's movies, apart from Batgirl, which wasn't right, especially the way they didn't release it. That was just wrong on so many levels, and I don't see what favours it did. I think what was more damaging for them was releasing and interfering with those DCEU movies. That really said a lot. But because the DCEU movies, even though Gunn did interfere with a couple of them, had very little, if nothing, to do with James Gunn, he's going to be judged on Superman. But interesting things happening, because Creature Commandos is really the first release for DC Universe. You would think there's not a lot riding on that, but actually it's the first thing people will see. And that will be interesting, how people perceive that series. Do I believe a great many people are going to go to HBO Max and watch Creature Commandos? Absolutely not. But what will happen is all those DC hardcore fans, all those excited shills who think James Gunn, as I keep on saying, is movie Jesus, will be watching it. So if they feel kind of underserved, that will kind of create a problem for Superman. So in a way, there's quite a bit riding on Creature Commandos too. I don't know, and again, Creature Commandos, a group of people. The Authority, a group of people. So I'm not just being mean to James Gunn. I've just given you great examples where I've proved to you James Gunn is a one-trick pony. So what's the difference going to be with Superman? Well, I and you will wait with bated breath to see if he can, you know, break the habit of a lifetime and make a film about one individual character.